Why we're here is there's this beautiful project to save and record the diaries of E.G. Browne, who was a significant figure in Oriental studies and particularly Persian studies, and a famous Pembroke figure. I say save, of course that sounds a bit dramatic, but we have these books, and of course they're over 100 years old now. They're his own handwritten. The main one is his handwritten account of his year in Persia. And of course these become faded with use and they need to be more accessible. That's really the point of digitizing, is to make things not only secure for the future but also accessible to people who want to come and study them.
The main purpose of digitization is not only preservation in the digital form, the manuscript, but it's also to give the access to all of these images to the wider audience. And the first step to do that is to photograph the manuscript, and this is what I'm doing now. Actually, a very interesting fact is that I started it more or less in 125th anniversary, and when I started photographing the first diary, I was able to open it on the page when I found the same date, exactly 125 years ago, when he was traveling across Persia. And I could read what he was doing that day, where he went, what he did. That was really fascinating, and I think for every person who is not even specialist in that field will find it very interesting.
One of his most important monuments really was this 4-volume history of Persian literature. I think that would stand as his masterpiece, where he surveys the whole of Persian history and the literature of each period. And it's really the literature that he's most interested in, and this comes through in his journey to Iran. He's collecting bits of poetry, but he's also involved with the politics of Iran. It's not simply a scholar sitting in Cambridge making nice editions and studying manuscripts, collecting manuscripts. He's very much involved with current events. We have his journal of the year he was actually there, and then fairly soon after he came back and took up his post in Cambridge, the most significant event in Persian history at that time was the Constitutional Revolution. And he took the side of the Persian people in their struggle against the Qajar autocracy, and is very much admired still for this. He's a figure who really stands out for the Persians as a true sympathizer and lover of Iran. And I think characters like this are extremely important, especially nowadays, because there's simply so much ignorance of Iran and so much hostility directed towards the country, and such a lack of awareness of the reasons for what's happening there and the reasons for Persia's attitude to the West, that essentially someone like Browne is a figure who can overcome these barriers.
We've started first with a careful examination of the manuscripts. The paper is very fragile and has been worn with slight tears in the edges in some places where it's been read and where the atmosphere has caused the paper to degrade. The leather is also very poor quality and is acidic, so it's flaking away, leaving red marks on people's hands. The books are very weak down the spine and on the joints, so that's a concern because we've got to make the books open safely so you get a nice view of the page. You can read all the text which goes right close into the margins. One of the problems with these manuscripts is that a lot of the leaves have been written in pencil, and there are some beautiful little sketches showing scenes of people sitting around having conversations. These, because they've been used a lot and people want to display them obviously, have been opened and closed a great many times, and that's causing some of the graphite to smudge. We don't want to interfere with the leaves, so instead we're going to interleave them with silicon paper, which is an archival grade of paper, so that there's no face-to-face contact between the leaves as they're turned, so there'll be no more rubbing. That problem won't get any worse.
So the project to digitize the manuscripts are extremely important. There's a lot that he has in his daily journals which haven't found their way into the printed text. Interesting snippets of encounters with different people, and inevitably quite a lot of drawings and inscriptions and things that he's noting as he's going along.
First part of the digitization is to capture the images of the manuscript, and to do that I'm using medium format camera with high resolution 40 megapixel digital back and special copy stand to make sure that the size, one-to-one size of the manuscript is consistent, and the flashlights, photographic flashlights.
And we hope many people will be very interested to see it. This is a major figure, not only in the college's pantheon of great scholars, but of course in its own right it's a very interesting and important work. And Browne is able to bridge the gap between the English and the Persians in a way that not many people have. He's a very remarkable figure. He's an important figure even in our time now. We have this street named after him in Tehran, as a recognition of his sympathy for the Persian people and their struggle against autocracy at the beginning of the 20th century. And our benefactor, an old Persian student, Bahman Irvani, who's kindly helping us with this project, recalls that as a young boy he was in Tehran at the time when the street that is now E.G. Browne, Kuche E.G. Browne, was actually being named. So there's a nice personal connection there that lasts across the generations. So we're very excited about the project. Of course, there are many other treasures in the Pembroke Library of a similar sort of value and interest. And of course, ideally, we'd like to get far more of what we have online up there for people to enjoy without having to come back to Pembroke to do so.